One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I got a great question for you. And this is going to be like a what the heck are you talking about type question. So I'm just going to lay it on you right now. If you're a founder, if you are somebody that started a business, if you're instrumental in the success of the business, the question is, what if you left today? What would happen? And most people think that the company would close, it would crash, there would be a major problem with it. I remember when I sold my company, I was in a great spot where it just kept on going like I was never there. So I built it to be sold. And I found a guy that's going to help us with what's called the founder's trap. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Charles Gaudet. How are you today, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic, thank you. Appreciate you having me here.
Absolutely excited to unpack this. You're founder and CEO of a company called Predictable Profits, among others. But tell us about Predictable Profits. What's that all about?
Well, I mean, you said it right in the beginning. It's all about helping people escape the founder's trap. The interesting thing is that there are two really hard points to growing a business. And we all know about the first one, right? It's starting the business. But then the second one, a lot of times people just don't recognize what's going on. And they get this feeling that they're working harder than they've ever worked before. And
Sure. Yep.
yet they're making less money per hour that they're working. And they're not sure what's happening. And that's because they built their business on the backs of hard work, worth a month, and referrals. And then that hits a ceiling at some level. A lot of times it's between that 1 and 3 million mark. Sometimes it happens a little earlier, sometimes a little
Sure.
later. But that's what we do. That's what we call the founder's trap. And that's where we help people get through that second phase of their business and help them build that strategy and to go on. And that's where, I mean, we've taken companies that were doing six figures, and 7 years later, I mean, we've got one company that started with us six figures and now he's doing 66 million. So,
Wow.
um, yeah,
Fantastic.
it every once in a while a squirrel gets a nut. We managed to figure a few things out over the last few decades.
Well, and I guessing we're picking a couple people up off the floor right now, Charles, because they're trying to comprehend what their business would be like if they weren't there. And I think that's the short-sightedness that a lot of us have. We're so busy working, in the business that we forget about working on the business. So, let's start with you, if you don't mind. I mean, we talked before we jumped on today about you started your entrepreneurial journey at the ripe old age of 4. So, what the heck was going on at 4 for Charles that you must have been selling something to somebody or you were doing something. So, fill us in on what you were doing.
So I sold artwork to my neighbors. My
Okay.
dad worked every waking hour of every day. That's how I first actually even became aware of the Founder's Trap. Worked every waking hour of every day. He was at work before I got up in the morning. He came back after I went to bed at night. So I didn't really know him until the third grade. But when I
Wow.
did see him, he would say, "Kid, if you ever want to make something of yourself, you got to start your own business." And so as a kid, I didn't know what to do, but I had a box of crayons and some construction paper. So I drew artwork. I went to my neighbors and I sold artwork. But there is a story in there um, that I think it's worthwhile because the one of the most important lessons that I ever learned was actually when I was 4. And I went to all my neighbors and they happily handed over money. 50 cents is all I was
Yeah,
asking. But they happily
sure.
handed over money. Who's going to say no to a little kid, big blue eyes? Except Mrs. Hersey. She did.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
And Mrs. Hersey actually, she said to me, she looked at my artwork and she goes, "Charlie, is this really the best work that you could do?"
Wow.
And I was never one to lie, but I still remember feeling for the first time in my life my blood rushing into my face and like the heartbeat in my face. I was so embarrassed and I didn't know what to
Yeah,
say.
sure.
Um, and I was like, "No." And she said, "So why would you ask me to buy something from you at 50 cents when it's not worth it?" And I didn't know what to
Wow.
tell her. And she said, "At best, I think it might be worth 4 cents. Will you take 4 cents for this?" And I told her I would. And she was the last sale that I made in my artwork business, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it was at that moment that I said I will never sell scribbles again.
Sure.
And that really is important. When we start a business, oftentimes as founders, we have this dream of more freedom and more money. And that's what drives a lot of people to start a business: more freedom, more
Sure.
money.
Yep.
And so when we start a business with that mindset of more freedom, more money, we say, okay, how do I work the least amount that I can work and make the most amount of money? And many times when we think about working the most amount of money, we think in terms of short sightedness. It's like, what can I get somebody to pay for,
Sure.
without thinking
Yep.
about how can I make the biggest impact possible into somebody's life to transform their wealth, their love, their health, their whatever it might be, to solve a particular problem.
Yeah. Wow.
But what I learned over time is you get paid in direct proportion to the value that you provide others. And when you start focusing on the value you provide others, you make more money. Now, on the
Wow.
freedom side of things, that opens up
Yep.
another door and another trap. Because what I didn't have back then that everybody has now is AI. And so there's this allure of AI that we can get a lot of things done faster, cheaper, and whatnot by using it. But what's happening is people are inherently getting lazy. Instead of actually thinking about the strategy that goes into the input to and end up producing an output, they turn around and they go, write me a landing page on blah blah blah. Then it spits out a landing page and they put it live, and they go, write me a LinkedIn article, write me a this, write me a this, and they write all this stuff, and they go, I don't understand what's going on. Why is nothing working? And it's because you're not putting in strategy, you're not finding your authentic voice, you haven't focused on your unique advantage point. There's a lot of steps that are missing
Sure.
beyond just put it out there. And
Yeah.
so a lot of the founders right now, they're thinking about, okay, how do I make more money, without asking themselves another question, which is how do I create the biggest impact possible if I get paid in direct proportion to the impact? And the other thing is a strategy. Like, what is the strategy that's going to bridge the gap between where you're at and where you want to go? And they're missing
Sure.
the strategy. AI is not going to give you that strategy without the right context.
Wow. So 4 years old and you already had a closeout sale, huh? Your last one was you're regularly charging 50 cents and the lady chewed you down to 4 cents, huh?
I'm grateful
Good
for that.
lesson though, hey?
Most people don't have the courage to say no to a small kid, but yet she probably
Yeah,
was pivotal into why
she
I'm
did.
where I'm at.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, and I really appreciate the freedom and the money thing because as you know, Charles, there's a lot of people listening right now that they want to jump out of corporate America. They want to try to start something. And again, I think a lot of times we get the cart before the horse. I love thinking about why would you want to do that? And I'm guessing if you burn it down to two major chunks, it's either the freedom part or the money part. And a lot of times we get people that think we're out on the beach, all day and we open our laptop up for 30 minutes and that's our day. And then we go back to laying on the beach. And so, everybody defines freedom and money differently. Did you notice kind of your freedom and your money, kind of the definitions changing as you matured in your entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting because some of the most successful people that I know, they work more hours than others. So it's like, wait a
Yeah,
minute, I thought you did all this for freedom. I mean, the wealthiest man in the world is known for sleeping in his office and working 7 days a week and everything else. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought that's what you wanted. But then I realized that freedom didn't mean less work. Because I mean, Dave, you strike me as somebody that you love what you do, and then the old saying, you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So it's like,
right.
work becomes a hobby, and you enjoy it, and it never really feels like work. So I learned that what freedom was options, which means that instead of having to work, it's wanting to work.
Sure.
And it gives me the option of saying, what do I want to do? I get to do what I do with who I do and how I want to do it. Like, that's freedom,
Yeah.
not working less.
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. And I think everybody listening gets to define freedom and money their way. There's no right or wrong way. We just basically share our way. And if you align with it, great. If you have your own, that's even better. So, but I think it's awesome to consider starting your own business, enjoying that freedom and that money piece. So you're 4 years old and your neighbor says this that they say, did you kind of cool your jets when it came to the entrepreneurial piece, or was there something at 5, 6, 7, or when did it kind of kick back in for you, your entrepreneurial spirit?
I mean, I've always done something because you could say I was fighting for my father's approval and his love. So, I was always doing something. And after that, it
Sure.
was mowing lawns and the whole deal. And I after graduating college, I started a business nominated by Ernst and Young as being one of the nation's best seed stage companies. And then by 24, I created my first multi-million-dollar business. So
Perfect.
but the thing is that's the story. That's my story, and it's the truth. And when I'm speaking on stage or interviewed in the media and whatnot, everybody looks at that and it's like, oh man, you're so lucky to have your first multi-million-dollar business, and oh, it came so easy for you. And I, it's like it's funny because they
Yeah.
don't see this things that happen in between.
Yeah.
And I followed a very similar path to my dad in that, when I started this business, I woke up, every waking hour of every day, I went ahead and I continued to work like my father did. And during that entire process, I said to myself, I was like, you know what? Um, my dad would always tell me the early bird got the worm. So I'd set my
Yeah.
alarm for 3:30 in the morning so I wouldn't quote unquote oversleep. But if I happened to get up at midnight to go to the bathroom, then I just started work.
Yeah.
And so I did that 7 days a week. My dad would also say the secret to success is hard work. So I made sure that I worked harder than anybody else. But then what
Sure.
ended up happening was I'm driving home one day. I'm looking over through the windshield of my car, over the hood. I see the house over the left hand side, and at that moment I realized I wasn't going home because I got the shooting pain through the base of my spine all the way up into my brain.
Mm.
And within less than an hour, I'm in the emergency room. I'm on my back. Doctor says that I'm dying. My organs are shutting down, and and that's what's going on. And that's
Yeah.
because you can only push yourself so hard when you're not taking care of your health, when you're not taking care of just yourself in general. Like it breaks down.
Yeah.
And the first lesson I got was you get paid in direct proportion to the value that you create others. The second big lesson that I got is that it's not hard work that is the difference between success and whatnot. It's what do you do with the hours that you are working? It's creating that leverage and it's creating that strategy. And that's when I began to realize, when I started asking myself different questions instead of like showing up and just grit and working hard and whatnot. I started
Sure.
asking myself different questions. What's the best way for me to do this and that? And that's when I was able to go from in the hospital to then forming my first multi-million-dollar business within a year from that point.
Wow. Was
Um,
your dad an entrepreneur?
he
Was he an
was.
entrepreneur, Charles, or did he work for somebody?
No, he was an entrepreneur.
Okay.
Um, and like, here's the trap. When you think the story in your head is, I'm the only one that can do this. When the
Yeah.
story in your head is, I'm the only one that can sell this. When the story in your head is, nobody can do this better than me, and you hold on to everything, you're going to remain limited.
Yeah.
Um, this on February 22nd was the third anniversary of my father's death.
Hmm.
My father died from brain cancer. When he knew his time was coming, he wanted to make sure that he was able to leave something for his family. But the business
Okay.
was so dependent on him. He
Sure.
worked all through his brain cancer. All we wanted to do was to be able to spend time with our father, but he couldn't because he felt, if he needed to keep this thing alive for as much as he could in the business, because if he didn't,
Yeah.
he wasn't leaving anybody with anything.
Yeah.
And it was so bad that his last trip to the in the ambulance, but this is his final road trip. He's got his cell phone out in his hand. His brain wasn't working because with the brain cancer, so the power wasn't even on, and he was pretending like he was going through his emails.
Oh,
because
geez.
he was that programmed to work.
Yeah. Wow.
So it is really important, and we want better answers. We got to ask better questions.
Yeah. Do you feel like this founder's trap is a blind spot for a lot of people that they don't know that they're actually in it? I mean, it feels like, if you really stopped somebody, I mean, how could you have helped your dad, or was it, I mean, is there a way that looking back now, was there something that you could have did? Because I'm guessing there might be people listening that know somebody in the founder's trap. Maybe they're in it themselves and they just can't see it because it's a blind spot. So I'm just curious. I mean, do you feel like there was something you could have done looking back?
So the metaphor that I like to use, and that's a really good question, Dave. The metaphor that I like to use is if you see somebody that is extremely overweight, right, and you say, "Look, here's the deal. Do you know that there's a better way to be fit and feel better, more energy and whatnot?" They'd be, yeah. You know that that's going to require you to put down the pizza and stop drinking the beer and to get on the treadmill and blah blah. Yeah. Do you want it? Yeah. Will you do the work? No. And so I can't help that person. But
Sure.
then there's going to be other people like my brother who is nearly 300 pounds and now he's fit, looks great, and the whole deal. It comes down to, how bad do you actually want it? And are you willing to let go of the story that you're living right now? And my
Sure.
dad, unfortunately, took so much pride and had so much identity tied to the fact that nobody can do it better than him,
Yeah.
and just was so proud that he was the smartest one in the company. He was so proud in that nobody could outwork him and blah, blah, blah. And that was his identity. And he lived by that he wasn't willing to let go. And
Wow.
so some people know he knew he was in the trap. And I spoke to him all the time, but he didn't want to let go of it.
Hmm.
But then there are other people that they might not know they're in the trap, but they know they're hitting up a ceiling. They know that business shouldn't be this hard. They just keep saying like, "What is happening? Like it shouldn't be this hard. Why do I have competitors that are not nearly half as good as I am that are growing faster than me, that are more
Yeah.
successful than me? Something has to be, amiss here." And then
Yeah.
those are the people that start asking the right questions. And most of the time, and this is the part that's amazing. Dave, you sold a company. You understand how this works. You're a successful guy. As you know, the secret to getting out of the founder's trap is not doing more. It's
Right.
doing less.
Yep.
It's doing less. But what people tend to think when they're in this founder's trap is they often say to themselves, well, if I just make more money, then I'll get myself out. Right? That's the
Right.
common thinking. If I make more money, I make so. But this is what ends up happening, right? So their leads are largely driven by hard work, word of mouth, and referrals. And they go, well, I just need to make more money. So one of the first ways is, they think, let's get more leads. They go ahead and they get more leads and say, great, they get more leads. But they're doing founder-led sales. And so
Hmm.
because they're doing founder-led sales, what happens is they're generating more leads, so now they're getting more phone calls. So they're
Yeah.
getting more phone calls, so their calendar gets more full. And so now they have less time on their calendar because they became more successful in getting more leads. Now their calendar gets more full. And they're like, well, I just got to close more deals. And they become better at sales and they close more deals. But as they close more deals, that means that they have more clients that they have to deliver on. And so they're like, well,
Yeah.
I need to hire some people. And so they
Yeah.
start hiring people. And so they hire more people. So they hire more people, but the people that they hire are going back and they're going, hey, Dave, can you help me do this? What do you mean by this? Can you look over this? Can you help me? And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, now I'm spending more time working with my people because they're all asking me questions, but I still have leads coming in. I'm still putting things on my calendar now and it's like, oh, and my clients are still asking for me. They're still expecting me to sign off and, oh, but my clients, they love the fact that they can reach me 24/7 and I'm there so
Yeah.
responsive and
Yep.
and it's that relationship. And so they keep that. And then all of a sudden they realize that they're about to break because they can't, no matter how successful they are, they've now reached a ceiling. And
Right.
so at that point, they have to get out or be content with the same. And we saw this over 2020. I had a friend of mine, very successful. And that's the thing. When you go into the founder's trap, it's because you're successful. That's the weird thing about it, right? You
Sure.
fall into the
Yeah.
founder's trap because you're successful. But I had a
Sure.
friend very successful in the founder's trap. 2020 happened. He got COVID pretty bad. I think it was three weeks. I think he was out, couldn't be in. He was like really bad. When he was out, the company was gone. All his employees quit. customers left, that all the years that he spent over a decade building the company gone
Sure.
in 3 weeks.
Wow. That's crazy. And that's where I think a lot of people, that's why they never stop because they're deathly afraid if I take my foot off the gas, something serious is going to happen. So we're going to take our break here. When we come back, I want to really, you have an idea on how to fix that. So rather
Yeah.
than just keep people in that bad pain spot, we'll take a break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Charles Gaudet, the founder and CEO of Predictable Profits. So, you have a model called the Predictable Profits Operating System as a kind of a solution to this founder's trap. So, fill us in because I'm guessing right now what we just laid out, Charles, there's a lot of people going, holy crap, what am I doing here? How do I get out of this? I'm hoping that, again, this blind spot that we have as entrepreneurs, founders, I'm hoping that that blind spot is going to become visible here, and it's already starting to rear its head. So you created this predictable profits operating system. Was it based on your experience on what wasn't working to find something that was working, or how did you get this? How did you create this model?
So back in 2010, somebody offered to pay me to help them grow their business because I had just continued to build and grow companies, and somebody was like, "Hey, can I pay you?" And I never sought out to be a coach, but I was like, "Yeah, whatever, let's do it." And I did well, and the company went on to make 250,000 of 4.6 million is how we were able to grow them.
Good.
And then somebody else asked me, and then somebody else asked me, and then what happened was that I was a solopreneur. I was doing everything myself. And
Hmm.
then one of my clients actually sold his business and was like, "I'd actually like to work with you. So can I do that?" And he made me an offer I can't refuse. But then
Sure.
he kept saying, "What is it, man? What is it? Like, what is like the framework? Like, how do you do this?" Like,
Yeah.
and I didn't know at the time how I did it, but he kept pushing me and pushing me and prodding me and pushing me and prodding me, and then eventually we started like forming this bit of a framework around everything that we did, and then created a process. And through that process, we realized, wow, this is actually what ended up happening, and that became the birth of the predictable profits operating system. But at the very
Wow.
beginning, right, the very beginning, at
Yeah.
the start of the operating system, we have what's known as setup. Setup is the basis behind everything that supports sales and scaling and the whole deal. And when people think marketing, they go, "Oh yeah, no, I do marketing." Um, the funny thing is I've learned you can't do marketing. Nobody can do marketing. That's like me saying I do doctor. You can't do it.
Right.
And so this is when I usually get people looking at me like, "Dude, are you smoking the wacky tobacco? What are you talking about?" But marketing is a function. It's a function of how you create demand, how you capture that demand, and then how you nurture the demand. So when you break it into the functions, you have to make sure that in your strategies, you have a strategy for creating demand, capturing demand, and then nurturing demand. And when you break it into that and you build in those strategies, that's when you're able to start bringing in more leads more consistently and more predictably. And so the first step at getting out of that founder's trap is saying, let's bring you those more leads consistently and predictably that don't require your effort, your hard work, and so forth. Because, Dave, if I'm certain for you, the biggest stress point was wondering when the next call was going to ring, when the next order was going to be processed. But
Yep.
if you knew that those leads, quality leads, were coming in predictably every single day, that would give you the confidence to say, I can go ahead and I can hire somebody to
Sure.
then take over the sale so that I don't have to be the one closing because I got enough
Right.
leads coming in. I have the confidence to hire someone because without that, you don't want to hire somebody and then be like, I don't want to let them go 60 or 90 days from now. I don't want to do
Right.
that. So it
Sure.
gives you the confidence to hire somebody. And then as you hire that somebody and you start closing, now you get the resources to go ahead and do more. So that's the first step to get out because the formula for reaching any goal is that actions plus resources equal goal. And so when you look at actions plus resources equal goal, when you're an entrepreneur, your actions and you're a solo entrepreneur, your actions are huge. They're limited, well, I'd say 24 hours a day, but the reality is we're not working 24 hours a day, right?
Yep.
They're limited to maybe 10 hours a day or whatever it is that you're doing, right?
Sure.
But they're
Yep.
limited and resources are low. We have a little more resources now with AI because it creates a leverage and technology, a little more. But then as you bring in employees, you may have an employee that, you pay X amount of dollars, but get a 10 times return immediately on their efforts.
Sure.
When you can't get that in the stock market. So
Right.
it's like when you build a quality team of people around you, freedom, as you know, because you've done this, freedom, and the first time you feel it, I mean,
Hmm.
it brings chills. I got goosebumps right now because the first time you feel it, it is the most magical feeling
Yeah.
in the world. It's that day that you wake up and you realized you just had a sale happen without you having to be involved. You just had you just and the company starts to grow
Yeah.
independent of you, and it just starts. I still have chills. It just starts moving.
Sure.
And I mean, when I went to Italy last year and I left my computer at home and I just took off and I left my team.
Yeah.
What happened was the company, when I came back, the company had grown more than before I left. And when I came back, the interesting thing was they were ready to pack my bags and put me back on a plane because the
Right.
company actually worked better when I
Yeah.
wasn't involved. The moment I got involved, I started breaking
Sure.
things and trying to hold
Yep.
on to things and bottlenecking. But
Sure.
this is what we're looking for, right? How do we create a company where the leads come in that are not dependent on you? The sales can be closed, so you're not the one in every sales. And then you have the right scaling structure so that your zone of genius can remain in the seat of the visionary.
Yep.
If you think of a
Wow.
captain of a cruise ship, captain of the
Sure.
cruise ship, this is everybody's ultimate captain of the cruise ship. Captain stands back and they look at the map. And they look at the map because they're looking at the future. They're saying, okay, we're going from here to there. Are there any currents that we should take advantage of that's going to get us there faster, quicker, more efficiently? Okay, so I'm looking. Are there any storms coming in that I may have to navigate in order to
Sure.
protect my crew and all the people on board? What's going
Yep.
so they work into the future. Meanwhile, they have people operating the throttles, the steering wheel, everything out front. But then, God forbid, there's a big rogue wave that comes in. Captain steps in, takes the steering wheel, and says, "Don't worry, I got it. It's a temporary move where they come in and they work that day. And then they stand back again and let the team take over."
Wow. Yep.
But as a small
Wow.
business owner, as a founder, we think we got to hold on to everything. So rather than the captain protecting the crew and the people and everything, instead, we're fighting this urge to say, no, I want to steer the ship. I want to operate the throttle. Oh, wait, I got to go make dinner real quick. Let me go into the kitchen and let me go make dinner. And,
Yeah.
and so we limit our ability to grow by trying to hold on to everything. And we
Sure.
know that we may be the best closer. We may be the best this and that. But our highest return on our time is when we're the visionary. And it's okay if it's only 80, if maybe a team member can only do it 80% of what I would do.
Yep.
Because the 20% difference, I'll make more money by focusing on something else than I would if I held on to that 20% difference.
Sure. Wow, that's great. Well, I tell you, I'm the opposite of you, Charles, in that I remember specifically the first time in my business that my last business that I had that I sold. I remember when there was something that came through, a sale that came through that I wasn't involved with, a new customer came in. I was like paranoid. I was nervous. I was like, because I was a control freak. Someone else is doing, oh my gosh, maybe I'm replaceable. There was all this head trash that came in. So if you're listening right now and that's where you went, be okay with it because I started there. I didn't end there, fortunately, because it took me a little while to realize the power of that team to exactly what Charles is saying, to the point where delegation was really hard. To just, hey, I don't need to be involved with every sale, I don't need to be involved with every situation. If you're like that now and you're listening and you have to be involved in everything, there is probably some growth that has to happen for you if you want to continue to grow your business, because like you just said, you will hit a ceiling. And that's a great analogy of the how big a ship would you be able to handle if you were the captain, the cook, you were the engineer, you were absolutely everything. There's no way in the world that you could do that big cruise ship. So depending on how big you want your company to be, obviously you have to do that. So I think that's a help for the founders that are listening that maybe are stuck in that trap. For me, Charles, man, I was so paranoid. I was so nervous. Like, no one can do it as good as me. I
Yeah.
had all these self-regulating thoughts that really limited our growth for a while until I was able to check that out. Do you find a lot of people that are that way, that they are just holding on for dear life and they don't want to delegate, they don't want to do that, but then they want to grow, so they're kind of stuck in between those two?
I do find that, but what I find even more is the people that they hire
Okay.
people that are not quite as intelligent as them. And so then that becomes an issue, right? When you're always the smartest one in the room.
Yeah.
Because what you want to do is you want to make sure you hire people that are smarter than you for the role that you're filling. So the first hire most people are going to fill is the assistant role. Well,
Yeah.
guess what? You shouldn't have to tell an assistant how to be an assistant. If you have to tell an
Right.
assistant how to be an assistant, then you're smarter at being the assistant than the
Yeah.
assistant is.
Yep.
So you want to hire an assistant that's way smarter than you and the ability to be an assistant, so they may even be able to teach you or collaborate in that way. And so any hire that you make, you want to make sure that they're smarter than you in the role that they're being hired for. And
Yeah.
that's when you do that, it also allows you to let go a little bit more because you've got that confidence. But if you hire somebody and you're still telling them, no, you got to do this, or oh, why'd you do it this way? No, you have to, then all of a sudden, like you know that you like if you want it done right, you're gonna have to do it yourself because you can't even trust
Sure.
them to do their role the right way.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you're in great company because Steve Jobs said the same thing. We don't hire smart people, or we don't hire dumb people and tell them what to do. We hire smart people and they tell us what to do. So
Oh,
I
I
think
like
that's
that.
really powerful to think that, you're aligning with exactly what Microsoft did, is they hired smart people smarter than them, and then they brought that value. I struggled with that too early in my career. I'm like, man, that guy's smarter than me, or that girl's smarter than me, and it was very threatening. So, and again, I was younger, so it was easy to have that immaturity line, come up in my life. But now it's like, man, find the smartest person you can and just let them go,
Yeah.
because they rock at that. They're rock stars. We want to hire rock stars. I hear that all the time, all over the country when I'm speaking. I want to hire a rock star, but then they hire them and they either limit them, or they, push them down, or they don't let them hit that full potential. So I gotta believe one of the ways of getting out of the founder's trap as we start to land the plane today is to really hire smart people, find the best of the best, and let them do what they do. I'm assuming that's one of the best ways to get out of that founder's trap, correct?
You're right. The only caveat to that is, let's say I'm hiring a salesperson, right?
Yep.
I'm not going to go on LinkedIn, hire a salesperson, and then come in and then just be like, all right, welcome aboard. Here's your quota. Go get them,
Yeah.
Tiger.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're
Yep.
setting them up to fail. Because,
Sure.
if you think about it, you would have spent God knows how long trying to figure out how to sell it yourself, how to answer the objections, and so forth.
Right.
So, this is where you want to give them a playbook. You want to give them, convey the information that you've already figured out that's worked and what's not worked, so you can better set them up for success. So don't hire people and expect them to fix your problems. In most
Yep.
cases, like fix the problems, put it in a process, in a playbook, then hire those people and give them the room to make it better in dialogue, and then yeah, you're off to the races.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that onboarding is such an underutilized tool nowadays. Like you said, people hire and say, hey, here's your desk, there's the bathroom, and we work 8 to 5, and here's your computer, and here's your password to get in. And let me know if you got any questions. And it's just like,
Right.
whoa, 30-second onboarding when it should be like, 30 to 90 days. So
You're right.
I could talk all day about this, Charles. I want to be sensitive of your time. So, a couple questions. I'm going to let you go. What would your tip of the day be today for somebody listening? Maybe it's something we covered, maybe it's something that we haven't. But what would your tip of the day be today?
It would be AI proficient. And when I say AI proficient, we're in a new world with different variables. And you need to understand the tools that are available to you and how to use the tools. The quality of the input will be reflective of the quality of the output. You get better input with greater context and greater strategy,
Sure.
but use the tools. It's like going today, it would be like, going into let's say you're going to build a house and you've got your competitors using excavators and you're still using a shovel. So, which one is going to end up doing better? So be
There
AI
you go.
proficient would be the best tip, or the
Wow,
first
that's
tip that comes
awesome.
to mind.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I tell you, it's so hard to know what to do with it. So being proficient at it for yourself is definitely it's better than burying your head in the sand and thinking it's a fad like the internet or the TV. And it's also probably there's a balance there between not using it and relying on it completely where you never really have to think again. So there's obviously a great balance there. So
I'll
that's
give you a
awesome.
bonus tip though, if I can. A bonus
Yeah,
tip.
for sure.
So I learned this when I was in high school. My dad said to me, "Hey kid, I'll buy you a car if you become a wrestling champion." At that point, at
Cool.
my freshman year, I had a losing record in JV, not even
Oh,
varsity. Losing record,
wow.
never won one. He thought it
Yeah.
was a shoo-in that I wouldn't do it. The one thing that I managed to figure out though is if I find people who've been down the road that I have before, that I can go ahead and I can get there faster and easier. So I hired or I went to go see coaches that were in college that would train me when I wasn't training in high school. I went to Dan Gable, who was the number one wrestler in the world, never got a point scored against him. And I went to go see him twice. By my senior year, I won 3 state championships and was undefeated. So, and then from that point on, every business that I started, I looked to find a mentor and a coach that could help, who's been there
Sure.
before, and I could get there that much faster, easier, and with a lot less expense and headache. So that is a
Sure.
really important part that, thank God I learned that in high school, because there was
Yeah.
no way I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for that.
Wow. Well, hey, the $1 million question, Charles, is what kind of car did you get?
A Ford Explorer.
Oh my gosh, I'm
So,
expecting some big muscle car, and it was a Ford Explorer. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, well, the
Good stuff.
caveat was my dad was like, "Here's the car, by the way, you have to share it with your mom." And I'm like, "Wait a minute
Oh, come
here."
on, Dad. That's
I
unfair.
know.
You didn't read the fine print, obviously,
I
Charles. So
didn't. Yeah.
well, hey, you have a Beyond Seven Figures podcast, which we want to make sure and get people that are listening today to get over and listen over there. Great stuff going on all the time there. For somebody listening right now, Charles, that wants to learn more about predictable profits, maybe they're struggling with the founder's trap or they want to learn more about your operating system. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Sure. So predictableprofits.com, we've got a bunch of different resources there, including my book, The Predictable Profits Playbook, which they can go and they can get. It's just a little bit for shipping, but they can get the book over at predictableprofits.com. We also have a community that they can join and download additional resources, and that part there is for free. LinkedIn, I publish every day, and as long as they tell me that they were part of this podcast and they send me a connection request, then I'll accept them. Yeah, and I try to put out as many resources as I can to help the entrepreneur. We talked about this earlier. You get paid in
Yeah.
direct proportion to the impact that you provide others. So we're just trying to make a big impact and put out as much cool information as we can.
That's awesome. Well, and I know there's somebody listening right now that this is really some thought that they never had before, or they've been struggling with how do I get out of that founder's trap? Maybe they didn't call it that, but they all the symptoms and signs were there. So I just want to encourage you, rather than jump into your next podcast or jump into your next activity, you know what, just take a minute and really just ponder what Charles said today, because there's some really great stuff there. And for anybody thinking about jumping into owning a business, do a deeper dive on what freedom and what money mean to you. I think it's definitely going to be to your advantage to really understand why you're doing it. Again, so many people want to get away from working for the man, or they want to make 1 million, whatever it is. There's no right or wrong answers, but just the more that you understand your why, I think the more success you're going to have. So thank you, Charles, so much for hanging out with us. This has been awesome. I've been looking at this going, crap, I'm a solopreneur, so it's pretty safe to say between me and Dana and a couple other people that no one, I always ask, I'm like, you guys want to speak today? Do you want to coach? And I just nobody raises their hands. So I'm like, I'm in the founder's trap right now. So I got to work my way through that. So thank you for sharing some ideas for me and for us. And I can't wait to keep learning from you.
Hey, together we're better. Thank you.